Good morning. There's comments already. I love this. Oh my goodness. I don't have my microphone set up. Hold on. All right. I think we're good. Everybody can hear me? Good morning. I have wow, it's really neat that it allows you guys to start commenting before we even go live. Jenny and Jessica and Kelly and Abby and Gigi. Jessica something. Good morning, everybody. 90. That's not fun. I think that's what it's supposed to be here. And then my husband sent me a message that tomorrow is going to be 103. And we don't have air conditioning because we live in California. Where I live, you don't really need it that much. So not looking forward to that part of it. I'm gonna do a little bit of a disclaimer before we get started. I found out yesterday my dog has cancer, and so it's kind of taken a toll, and I'm here, but I'm kind of processing still. So I'm gonna do my best. It's probably gonna be a shorter, good morning, Doug. It's probably gonna be a shorter 30-minute session today just because I'm in the middle of doing a lot of research on my new regimen with my sweet little doggy who they gave the C word to the wrong family because we're gonna fight and she's gonna be good. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I did want to say on my online courses, I'm moving from doing those live every month to having them pre-recorded so they will be available for instant download by the end of September. So if you're interested in the mediation course, in the strategic communication, safeguarding yourself from alienation claims, documentation, any of those courses, you can go to the One Mom's Battle website, click on education, and then online courses. A couple of them are already available for instant download, but by the end of September, they will all be, and that way you don't have to. I get so many emails where, somebody says your mediation course is not until the end of the month. I have mediation tomorrow and I need to know how to plan and how to prepare. And so it just makes more sense for me, for everybody, that we go to pre-recorded. So those will be, and thanks everybody. My poor dog. We got her, just a little side note before I jump in, we got her in 2013, and it was really as the main part of my custody battle was starting to come to a close and the court had seen through him, but my girls had so much trauma in the 4 or 5 years leading up to that. And so one of, the dog, Pixie, has been such a huge part of my daughter's healing and my daughter's trauma. And so she's a family member, and we're gonna fight really hard and keep her around for as long as we possibly can. So, but I appreciate your comments. Thanks so much. Yes. So the first question that came in, and I'm also going to be shifting towards people submitting questions through Instagram. You can do it anonymously. The ones I'm getting through the email, that usually there's so much background required that I just can't bring them to our session. So I think we're going to move completely over the next month to submitting the question or the Coffee with Tina questions through our Instagram stories. You'll want to watch the stories. We'll probably run them Monday and Tuesday, collect the questions for the week, and then talk about them here on Saturday mornings. And I love that you're all joining me. I see my loyal people every Saturday, and I really and new people every week, and I really appreciate that. So the first question is, can Can custody be awarded to dad if mom abides by court orders and doesn't give more time to dad? So I think I know what this person means. And it's a question that I get. It comes up a lot. And first, I should do my fine print disclaimer. I'm not an attorney. I cannot give you legal advice. We are here as a community of survivors. We can talk through these things. I can share my personal, what I see happening in the court system, what I've personally been through. And I appreciate your comments because I don't have all the answers. So feel free to share your own perspectives, your own experience. I happen to be the one on camera, but we're all in this together. It's your community. So what comes up a lot is that, judges issue these orders. And first of all, so many of us struggle with boundaries in general. And then you add a narcissist into the equation and they have no regard for boundaries. And so we get so excited when we get this court order because in our minds, being people who are law-abiding citizens, we believe that is the letter of the law and that this is what we follow to a T. And yes, that common sense would tell us that's absolutely true. But what we see a lot is that a lot of judges want to see people being flexible. They want to see people co-parenting. They want to see people working things out together, which for us, it is such a big blow because we've waited so long to get these orders, these boundaries from the court. And so and then I see a lot of attorneys from opposing counsel, and I see the letters that they write just chastising many of you and berating you for being so rigid and not being compromising, where you're going, gosh, this is a person that if I give a half an inch, he's going to take or she's going to take 25 miles. This is not somebody, there is no compromise. The compromise is very one-sided when you're dealing with someone like this. But opposing counsel will often use these situations to make us look horrible, make us look like we're the problem, that we're too rigid and all of that. So for me personally, if I were faced with somebody, let's say, who wanted more time outside of the court orders, and that came up a lot with my ex-husband, not more time necessarily, but he wanted to constantly deviate from the schedule, or keep the girls longer, or pick them up earlier or later, or whatever it was. And so my response was constantly, I look forward to getting to a place in our co-parenting relationship where we can be more flexible with the schedule. But right now, due to the level of conflict in our case, I prefer to stick, or, I would like to stick with Judge Perry's orders exactly as they've been written. And that, in my opinion, does a couple of things. Obviously, your attorney has the final say. Your attorney is your voice, your advocate in the courtroom. But from my perspective, when a judge reads that, he goes, oh, she's not the conflict. She's looking forward to going beyond the conflict. She is stating that, she hopes to get to that point. She's recognizing the level of conflict as her reason for not wanting to deviate. And then, oh my gosh, look at my name there, how narcissistic I am. She cares about what I think and my important orders. I keep in mind most judges have very high narcissistic traits. And so when you're saying, it's one thing if you say, I'm not, deviating from the court order. But if you say, I intend to follow the court order as written by Judge Perry, it has a different tune to it. And it's, whether you want to call it reverse psychology, and taking what you know about narcissism and using it in a way that still presents you in a good light in front of the court, but still maintaining those boundaries. And you know, I choose my battles very wisely. And that is one thing I did well, I believe, during my custody battle is, you know, if there were things that I did feel comfortable, you know, letting him slide a little bit on or whatnot, you know, I wanted to always appear to be the reasonable person. So if there was a time where he said, hey, you know, I want to return the girls an hour late because of X, Y, and Z. If it were a legitimate, you know, they were at a friend's birthday party and I truly felt that they were safe, you know, I would say, hey, Seth, you know, I would prefer to stick to the court order as it's written, given the level of conflict in our situation. But, you know, on this occasion, I'm going to go ahead and, you know, let this go. I'll see you at 7 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock. And obviously not ideal. He would call and put the girls on the phone or whatnot and put them in the middle. So, and there were times during my battle where I would not deviate from the order at all under any circumstance, or not willingly anyway. And I actually involved the police multiple times. So, you know, you have to use your best discretion and what you know about the judge and your attorney's advice and all of those things. You know, it's so hard to give general blanket information or advice because, and what I tell people all the time when they send me questions is, you know, it's not that I don't want to answer, you know, sometimes it's just a matter of bandwidth. I don't have the capacity, but it's that it would be really unethical for me to even weigh in and share my perspective because there are so many variables in this situation. What I would tell you would be night and day different from what I would tell somebody else in our community. So, Deanna said, I've used your responses so many times. I've learned a lot about boundaries and it's worked well in the last 6 months. Thank you. Great to hear. That is wonderful. And Gigi says, if the judge is narcissistic or not, it is an ego stroke and deference to the law and order. Absolutely. And that's the thing. And that's where so many of us struggle, like I touched on, is we feel, you know, that's why we go, why is perjury not prosecuted in family court? Why do they not care at all about it? Because that's our belief going into it. You know, we project. Projection works both ways. We project our own positive qualities and traits onto others and onto systems that are not worthy of those projections. And so a lot of this is a learning experience, not just with how to interact with the narcissist, but understanding the system as a whole. And it's, you know, not every system is different or is the same, just like not every narcissist is the same. It really, you know, comes down to who's your judge, who's your evaluator. Hello, Hannah from Alabama. My aunt just moved to Alabama. I forget what town, but Aunt Bev is now in Alabama. It looks like a beautiful state. So thanks for joining us. Let's see. Number 2. So I guess to answer that question, can custody be awarded to dad if mom abides by the court order? You want to present as the healthy co-parent. And that's what my overall presentation was, is that no one, and more than a presentation, that's my truth. I'm operating from my place of truth. So, you know, every situation is so different. And my guess is that, Gigi says, great boundary workbook, Moving Beyond Betrayal, the 5-Step Boundary Solution by Vicki Tidwell Palmer. Love it. I should probably have that in my One Mom's Battle recommended reading on our website because that sounds like a great one. Gigi, if you don't mind messaging me, maybe through my email, tina@tinaswithin.com, and remind me to add that to our reading list. I would love to do that because, boundaries are something that you have to, one of the things that I find every survivor has in common is boundary issues. And whether that's, with yourself, with others, it's not just the narcissist. A lot of people are groomed to have very blurred boundaries as kids. And back then, I didn't even know what a boundary was. One of the things that I teach my kids, we have emotional boundaries, we have psychological boundaries, we have spiritual boundaries, we have physical boundaries, and we have a lot of different boundaries. And when you make sure your boundary is strong and somebody crosses that, that's a huge red flag. And those are the lessons we have to be teaching our kids so that we can break the cycle. And especially when we're co-parenting with a narcissist, because they're the reasons why boundaries get blurred. And we don't want our kids to go forward and repeat these cycles. Somebody asked, can someone have narcissistic traits without having full NPD? So I'm not a psychologist. I'm not really qualified to, weigh in. My personal opinion is that we all have narcissistic traits. Ego can be a very healthy thing as long as you have a healthy ego. But when I think of it as a spectrum to where, there are people who have very high narcissistic traits, but they're probably could not be fully diagnosed. But I do see people, my personal opinion, people who are up at that upper end of the spectrum during times of conflict or chaos or whatever's going on, they go over to an even more unhealthy direction. And so that's where, I do talk to a lot of people who will say, I knew he had, a big ego and everything else, but it was never to an unhealthy degree until I filed for divorce. And I am dealing with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And so I do think there are a lot of situations like that. And those are the ones where over time, things do smooth out and things do tend to get better. But yeah, I think that absolutely you can. First of all, it's really hard to get a diagnosis of NPD, if not impossible. I have seen them over the years, but most psychologists are trained not to actually issue that type of diagnosis. So they'll just say that the person has high narcissistic traits. But yes, to answer your question, from my lay person's point of view, absolutely. Somebody can have high traits without, a lot of people have high traits without full-blown NPD. How do I stop the narcissist from a smear campaign, trying to ruin me at work, that type of thing, and with friends? I went through that. I can share my personal perspective. Knowing my truth was half the battle. And I didn't have the bandwidth. So when my divorce started, my ex-husband went on a smear campaign. He would go online and find a picture of me. I remember one time I was walking through a concert with a girlfriend. We saw a mutual friend who was a guy. I gave him a hug, posed for a picture. The entire interaction lasted probably 10 seconds because he was trying to find his seat. Never saw him again after that. It ended up, this picture from Facebook got blown up into an 8x10, submitted as evidence that I was out gallivanting around town, that I had had 4 affairs with 4 men in 4 months. It's a 444. I will never forget that. I've never had an affair in my entire life. And were in a no-fault state, so it didn't matter anyway, but he was trying to paint a picture that I was this horrible mom who was out at concerts, out with all these different men. He was painting a picture that I had a revolving door of men around my kids. Anybody who knows me is laughing right now, because if I have any faults when it comes to men, is that I am a relationship person. I am long-term, too long-term most of the time. And it's actually really funny looking back. But at the time, we owned a business together. So we had a list of email addresses from the Chamber of Commerce, 3,000 local business owners on this email address. And my ex-husband created an email that he was going to send to all of them, threatened multiple times, did send to quite a few of them. And it was titled 4 Men in 4 Months, with all this picture collage of me. I live in a small town. I have always been a business owner in this town. It was humiliating. And I will tell you, as dark as that time was for me, I just decided one day, I know my truth. I'm not going to engage in this, because that gives him the feed supply that he wants. My truth is that I'm an amazing mom. I'm a good person most days. I have my moments. We all do. I'm a good person. I'm not out having affairs. I am not sleeping with everyone in town and drinking every day of the week. And the people who know me and believe in me will be here with me through all of this. And the people who doubt me, who aren't Team Tina, that's not for me I don't have the mental energy and bandwidth to deal with that. I've got my kids need to be my focus. This court case has taken over my life. I just can't. So, for me, and I can tell you now, being able to look back from a different vantage point, every single person who stood by my side is still by my side today. And even the people who did believe him for certain, at certain junctures, are 100% back on my team now. So stay in your truth. You don't have time to deal with the smear campaigns. If somebody approaches you, you can take it, person by person, whether you want to sit down and have a conversation with that person. But I know smear campaigns are one of the most painful things. When your whole world is already falling apart, you pride yourself on who you are as a person, and that's under attack. And I guarantee you, the smear campaign likely started way before the relationship ended. It's smear campaigns in a lot of situations start the day that they meet you. They're collecting information to use against you, how they can twist it. I can't even imagine the mental spreadsheet that these people keep, because it's just the things I hear and see. It would take a lot. I don't know how they have the energy to do what they do, and to be as calculated and strategic about it is truly mind-blowing to me. Even as much as I know about these people, it's still, I will never get it. I don't want to. None of us need to. Don't engage. Yes, absolutely. Okay, what is the most important thing for me to do now that we reached a settlement after 2 days of litigation? I want to protect myself and my kids if we wind up back in court. I never changed how I was operating, even on the day after a 2-day trial. My mindset was, this is a marathon. This is an ultra marathon, and something like a 2-day trial, it's just another hurdle. And so my what I found in my case, my ex-husband, he would wait till the day after court And then he would set the mask down on the table and he was back. They keep that mask on, a lot of them do, so tight leading up to court because the spotlight is on them. And then the second they know there's not a court date on the calendar, they're back in full force. And so I found that the times that my documentation was the most time consuming was in the weeks or months right after a big court date. That's when he gave me the most ammunition, the most documentation. And so, I had from very early on scheduled time on my calendar, and it was time chunked in there. There was no deviating from it. Mondays and Thursdays was my original days, and it was like 2 or 3 hours each day. And that increased depending on what was going on. But, those were the days I would sit down, I would compile all of my documentation, because if you finish one court date, it likely means the next one, if it hasn't been scheduled, it's out there lingering somewhere on the horizon. So unfortunately, that's the mentality that many of us have to operate in. And I don't know your situation, your ex, but for me, it was just continuing the documentation, continuing to build my case in anticipation that we're going to be back in front of the court. And so leading up to the court date, he suddenly becomes the model parent, calling schools, therapists, asking for updates. Yeah, and that works a lot of times. They get a glowing star. They haven't shown up to co-parenting therapy for 6 months, and then the week before trial, they show up, they get their gold star, and then the court's like, "Oh, good job." And you're like, what about the last 6 months? But the courts are so focused on people coming together and singing Kumbaya and being good co-parents that they overlook so many things. It's that family court grace period for the first couple of years where they just overlook a lot in hopes that people will come together, start a new chapter, and make it a healthy one. Unfortunately, the type of person that we're all dealing with, that doesn't necessarily work out that way. So just, it's, the bar is much lower for them. Yeah, I've always said that the threshold of what's acceptable when it comes to the family court system is so much different than what's acceptable to me as a healthy parent. There's a huge disconnect between what I feel is unacceptable and what they view as unacceptable. And I am able to see it through their lens. The things that they see every day, I get glimpses of it through my lens, and I couldn't do it. There is no way. People always say, "Why don't you go to law school?" No way in this world I could do this every day, because I see the things that the attorneys have to deal with, and they're trained, even if they do have empathy, they're trained to shut it off. And it's just, it's an inhumane system. Let's see. Last question. What parallels do you see between victims of abuse in criminal court and in family court? Boy, do I have an opinion on that, which I can't go too deep into, but unfortunately, I've now had the experience watching my ex-brother's criminal case. For those who don't know my story, the majority of my custody battle was spent trying to keep my kids safe from my ex-husband's brother. And I had cut off all contact with him during the marriage. My ex-husband and I were 100% in agreement that my kids would never, ever be around him. And in fact, when we separated, when my daughter youngest was 2, she had never met him before. She didn't know his name. She did not know he existed, and we live in the same county. But true to narcissistic fashion, literally the day my ex and I separated, he took my daughters around his brother just because he knew that was the way to push my buttons the most. And fast forward to 2006, that was in 2009. Fast forward to 2016, my ex-brother-in-law was arrested here in San Luis Obispo County and is said to be the biggest child molester in the history of our county. And he had filmed, or allegedly, so much child porn that the DA's office had to purchase new computer equipment to be able to take in 3 terabytes of data. So year 4, where right now is year 4 of his case, and we still don't have trial dates. We did in October, and now they've been kicked out to next April of 2021. And, it's the criminal court system is as broken as family court. Victims have absolutely no rights. It's an absolute joke. And so the parallels that I see between victims of abuse in criminal court and family court, I think they're equally broken institutions, just in different ways. The perpetrator has way more rights than victims do. And that is my personal experience and opinion. By the time his criminal trial is completed, it'll be year 5, and that's just so unacceptable. So lots of great questions coming through, and I know we are so backlogged on questions. I'm going to go ahead and sign off for today, but hang in there. I know this is a lot. Even the strongest people that I talk to, this is and this is hard no matter who you are, no matter what your resiliency is like. And, we're coming into fall right now. And fall, when it comes, I've blogged about this in the past. I talk about it in my e-newsletter. If you aren't signed up to get my e-newsletter, it's called Lemonade Wisdom. For those of you who haven't realized my Lemons to Lemonade theme and story, you can just go to the One Mom's Battle website, and there's a pop-up. It'll come up for our canned responses, and you can sign up for our e-newsletter. But I talk about the fall. September is usually decent. You have bumps because of school starting and all of that, but you get into October, and then the anticipation of fall and Thanksgiving and Christmas, these people are off their rockers. And it is very cyclical and unpredictable. And, it seems across the board, all of them, just become unhinged the closer we get into the holiday season. So now is the time to start putting on your seatbelt. People ask me, why do you think that happens? And I think it's very much people walking around, and who knows, this year may be different because we're in a pandemic, but people walking around, the holiday spirit, joy, all the decorations, the warm fuzzies, and they aren't capable of feeling those things, and it spins them, and we are the ones that suffer. So be prepared for that, because every fall, like clockwork, it starts happening, and it's a real thing. So it's like a full moon every day of the week from now until the end of the year. So thank you all, and thank you for prayers for my puppy. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Happy Saturday.